Last hour, we heard from a former Morsi spokesman. He told us that he has a list of 2,600 people who have died in Egypt so far. Of course, the official Egyptian government number is much lower. I want to get some insight from a former U.S. State Department spokesperson, PJ Crowley. And PJ, would that higher death toll, we're talking triple the official number, would that change anything for the United States?
Well, I think the death toll is going to go up. We haven't seen the last of the confrontations between security forces and the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's the dilemma. Egypt has laid forward a very aggressive roadmap. 7 months from now, having rewritten a constitution, conducted a parliamentary election, and a presidential election. If we have more clashes, it does not create the conditions that allow a return to democracy on something that we would define as such.
I'd like to get a better sense from your former experience at the State Department about what's happening behind the scenes here in the United States right now. Obama came out, he's canceled joint exercises with Egypt. Is that a big deal? But with everything that's unfolding, why has it yet to cut off aid to the Egyptian military?
Well, one of the challenges right now is simply finding out what's going on and of the major players, who's doing what. What is the military thinking? What are they prepared to do? Are they listening to anybody's good advice in terms of avoiding violence? In terms of the Muslim Brotherhood, how are their calculations changing? And do they have control over their supporters who are obviously taking actions on their own? So part of the challenge is just finding out what's going on. And then obviously, what kind of levers do you have? The United States has limited influence. It's a weak hand to play, and they're looking to figure out what cards can we play. Obviously, the aid is part of it. The president sent a strong message today, and that Bright Star message will get the military's attention. One of the challenges for the administration is how do you convince the Muslim Brotherhood that has been pushed out of political power to re-engage in a process so that you achieve your long-term objective, which is a return to civilian rule and a more inclusive democracy than Egypt had before.
But of course, they are saying that they are, and they're willing to compromise. We've also seen the United States try to prevent this from happening, to get ahead of this violence. And two current, powerful U.S. Senators, John McCain and Lindsey Graham, recently spent some time there in Egypt. And I want to play something that Senator Graham said and then get your reaction to it.
In a democracy, you have to sit down and talk with each other, even though you may not like the person on the other side of the table. One of two things are going to happen. Things are going to slowly get better, and that means releasing some prisoners and beginning to talk. Or they're going to quickly get worse, which means people are going to start dying, and that, to me, is the worst outcome.
Well, those comments came several days ago, and things have gotten worse, and we have more protests ahead tomorrow.
Yes, and I mean, this is the work of a generation. We shouldn't be surprised, and 2 years ago, we understood that the path to democracy in Egypt would not be a straight line. There would be mistakes made, and all of the players in Egypt are making those mistakes. That said, the greatest challenge is within politics, how do you move from a psychology of zero-sum, I gain, you lose, to something that's positive sum. We all have an investment in the future of Egypt, and we all get to play a part in that process. These are very difficult traditions to establish.
You mentioned that the United States having limited influence more than ever with the situation in Egypt. We had China coming out and saying that it's asking for peace and for the situation to resolve peacefully, the violence to end. We're also hearing from the EU, from several countries in the Middle East, condemning this violence. At this point, is there anyone that Egypt will listen to, or the Egyptian military will listen to?
Well, I mean, there are lots of countries and players providing good advice. So far, the Egyptian military is not necessarily following any of that good advice. And that's what's crucial here. This is a process that is owned by Egyptians. These are Egyptian decisions, and these are Egyptian mistakes. And sometimes you unfortunately have to learn from mistakes to advance. The real difficulty here is in terms of the reestablishment of the emergency law. We're back to where Egypt was in December of 2010. We've had one attempt at at a democratic process. Obviously, that has stalled. The real question is, how does anyone, whether it's an interim government, the military, or other players, come together and turn this around and move a process forward? The road today is much more difficult than it was 6 months ago and 2 years ago.
And not getting any easier. PJ Crowley, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.